Cool. So, hello everyone. Welcome back to workshop number 3 from TU20 Ventures. So, hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing every week. There's still more to come, but yeah. Anyway, so today we are we have a speaker. So it's some very exciting news. So Dan, actually from Revenue Analytics, he's based in Atlanta, will help us understand the role of data scientists, how data science is used across the industry, and specifically teach us about his experiences within data science. So without further ado, Dan, please take it away. I will
All right.
share my screen.
Okay, I'll start sharing now. So let me know if you can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
So first of all, I want to take some time and say thank you for inviting me today. It's been great to be part of Tech Under 20. It's been great to met Xander, Sam, and Timur, and have a initial conversation with them about what and understand what you guys are doing. As I said, it's exciting to see that you're starting to get involved in data science and analytics, and this is an area that it's been hot for a couple of probably decades now. It's continued to grow over time. And what I would like to do today is just walk you through the dimensions, just kind of thinking about what it takes on a day-to-day to be a data scientist, but think of it in a more general way of executing analytics. I also talk a little bit about my experience in the field. I come from a revenue management and pricing consulting. We've evolved towards a product world. So talk a little bit about that, and then kind of conclude with a couple of remarks about the new normal and what do we expect in these times that we all know are very impacted by the pandemic. So let me kind of jump into the first topic, which is the data science aspect. And there are different ways to describe this, and but I think for most part, what I have here today, it's true across the board. You have to approach the data science as a structured process, kind of think it as a number of steps, and there's a dependency between these steps and kind of a sequence of executing. And the first one, which is probably one of the most important, is just the problem definition. Here you're talking about the why. So why are we doing the analysis to begin with? I recommend a great TED talk by Simon Sinek. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the golden circle. Always start with the why. A lot of organizations and a lot of initiatives fail by just starting with the why and identifying why is this analysis or piece of work or product needed in the first place. And as long as you start with that in your work, you're going to be successful as you go through the next step. So that's the first one. The second and the third, it's truly about getting the oil for our analytics, so to speak, which is the data. Data is the new oil, right? So first we have to collect the data. There are multiple aspects you have to think about it, like where is the data located? Is it locally? Is it a public source? Is it something that we need to get it from a customers? And then you get into confidentiality things and protecting the data and security, which is extremely important. The second aspect is data size, and there you're getting into aspects. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, like data velocity, how fast I can process that data, which can as bigger as it gets, the bigger it gets, the harder it gets to be processed in real time. And then lastly is the data side. What type of data are we talking about? Is it structured? Is it unstructured? Are you talking about the cloud location? Is it a data warehouse and things like that? So once you get the data, inevitably you will need to wrangle it. There is no such thing as clean data. You will run into missing data conditions. and those will need to be addressed. They could distort your analysis quite a lot. Then outliers, extremely important to determine because they can have an influential impact on your analysis. And finally, the edge conditions, like how do we approach a div by zero, right? You would think that that's not important, but I can think of numerous instances where something like that had a big impact on recommendations and analytics as a whole. So think about this step. It's extremely important, and inevitably you'll have to do it. The fourth step, it's running the analytics. Where you're getting into model selection, ultimately an analytics model, uh, it's about getting a score. Whether you're talking about the probability score or a magnitude score, whether you're talking about supervised or unsupervised techniques, you kind of have to think about what applies to your specific situation. And I think this one ties very well with the definition of why. Then you have to think about this is a descriptive type of work, predictive in generating some type of forecast, or prescriptive. You're going to take some actions based on that. The fifth step, it's about deriving insights. Nothing it's palatable without getting to some type of actionable insight. So you have to define the success of your analysis, and you have to ask yourself, so what? So now that we have the result of the predictive analytics or descriptive or what have you, how do we apply this on a day-to-day basis? Last but also extremely important, it's the monitoring and learning. And here you define the metrics of a kind of related to the success, the KPIs, and you continue to calibrate your parameters over time to improve. So it's monitoring and learning. So keep in mind, these are the core steps. There are different definitions on the internet, but I think applying these 6 steps will always drive success for your analysis. So now let's look at each step, and kind of the way I set this up is just with a small example. So the first one, it's around defining the problem. So let's say we have an example, or where we're identifying the why as a way to reduce complexity for a product offering without risking additional revenue. And in this case, you have a situation where you have two products, printers. One, it's a demand for black and white. The other one, it's color. The color, it's obviously much more orders, but then we're asking ourselves, and you see this decreasing trend over time on the black and white. So the question is, could we eliminate the black and white? And the advantage of that is to reduce complexity and cost, but then also without impacting revenue. So during this process of identifying the why, you're just asking yourself a bunch of exploratory questions, like what is the risk of eliminating the black and white main product? Why are the school choosing the black and white to begin with? Maybe there's an artistic element. There's a lower price point, which we would eliminate by eliminating this type of offering. Or maybe there is a premium associated with that, the black and white, because it's more artistic. So there are opportunities for us to charge more. So the first step here is identifying the why, playing some scenario modeling, and asking yourself key questions. The second step on the data collection, I talked a little bit about this, but there are a couple of key questions you should think about when collecting the data. One, I think it's the most important. Are there any security protocols? Does your data require to be masked? And what type of security protocols need to be in place to make it safe to use? Do we need secondary data? Are we using just our own data, or we're going to have a third-party provider that gives us this data? And then in that sense, we have dependencies on this secondary data. Is it transformed data or raw data? As much as possible, we want to get as closer as possible to the raw data, just because then we have opportunities to transform it and get all the value out of it. But there are trade-offs. The closer you get to the raw data, the noisier it becomes. So you just have to understand what is the level there. Then what is the required data velocity for your type analysis? Is it truly real time? Real time, it's really hard to achieve. And in that case, you'll have to limit it and set up your infrastructure that way. Is it near real time? Is it batch on like a nightly basis? Or it's custom, could be run on a monthly basis or quarterly or what have you. Then what are the data retention policies? How much data we need to retain? And finally, what is the data storage platform used? Is it cloud, in-house, or public? And you have different strategies and different costs associated with that as you analyze these options. So you should think about which one to select that makes more sense for your project. Moving to the third step, data wrangling. So, and here I have an example on the outlier detection, which is an observation point that is distant from other observations. The problem with outliers is they can distort model identification, can cause bias in parameter estimates, and lead to erroneous forecasts. You have to understand, regardless, I mean, this is just one example of the edge condition or outlier specific condition you're trying to accommodate, what type of edge condition or outlier you're talking about. If it's a global outlier, you have a data point that could significantly deviate from the data set. If it's a contextual outlier, maybe it's just characteristic to a certain time period of the year, so you have to think about geography. Or it's a collective outliers. And actually, with collective outliers, a lot of the unsupervised methods like clustering are based on that, right? So you're just finding ways to get groups of data points with the same element that are very different than the rest of the groups. So you have to understand the characteristics associated with these outliers. So now let's move to run analytics. I think there are three aspects related to the analytics, and there are many methods, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, bear you with a lot of details. But what's important in selecting analytics is to understand the goals of each of the model that you're using. So in this case, let's say we're talking about the classification and regression tree. So how classification and regression tree can be used. It's determined either as a regression model, which determines which independent variable are significant drivers by means of p-values or things like that. Could be used to identify segmentation, or could be used as a predictive model. So you have to know what are the goals of your analysis and select and align those goals with what you want to achieve. Then you have to understand at the high level what are the classification and regression trees used for. What is that model used for? And then understand what are the features of that models, right? So in the cases of CART, we know we have a splitting rule that it's using nodes. You have stopping rules, and you also have ability to make predictions. So kind of think of like what are the key features at the high level, and those are the things that you can change and over time to get the results that are intended for your analysis. Deriving insights, couple of guiding principles for deriving insights. When you start the project, you're open to expanding your universe, and then as you go towards the end, you're kind of isolating and narrowing down towards your final conclusion. So that's kind of a general pattern. A couple of bullet points here. The first one, it's around understanding the why. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The rest are about critical thinking. So when you think about your analysis and evaluating result, use your critical skills, right? Like don't see the forest because of the trees. Focus on answering the key question, and essential is you don't have to answer every question. And then pace yourself. Be sure to prioritize your effort. Don't address every single question under the sun right away. Kind of come up with a list of 3 things to do every day and get them done. And the last one, which I think is the most important, always keep the end in mind. So once you have the results, it's just like, well, what is the aha moment? So how can we do? How can we apply the results for our day-to-day operations? Last step, monitor and learn. And I'm going on a quick ML result here, which is kind of a peak best forecast. So in this case, you're establishing the training period with a holdout period, and you're establishing your KPIs, right? You have 3 metrics here, you have different models, and you're monitoring what happens in the holdout period over time. And then you're making a decision to select the best one. Why is it a machine learning? Because the model at this point in time can select the best one as you run the model. But you can also have some human interaction and select it yourself based on some business judgment. So what I want you to take out of this is just the importance of focusing on metrics and evaluating over time. So this is the first area of today's conversation, going pretty fast, and I will ask either Sam or Xander to keep me honest on time here. I'll jump to what I do today, to what revenue analytics today is doing today, revenue management. So what is revenue management? It's the application of disciplined tactics to predict customer behavior at the micro market level, optimize product availability and price to maximize revenue growth. The book here, it's a great mentor of mine, Bob Cross, and he was one of the originators of revenue management. But ultimately, we aim to sell the right product to the right customer at the right time for the right price. So a couple of concepts related to revenue management. I already talked about us using sophisticated analytics and the right product. We're taking the same approach of sequential setup, and we are starting with segmentation of our markets, where we're looking at products and customer base that will align with purchase behavior. Then we would model customer response, like price elasticity. We'll forecast our customer demand and optimize. Now you're getting into prescriptive, optimize the decision by price optimization. And lastly, it's measuring performance using either benefit measurement or updates on your market response model. So it goes across the entire spectrum, and these are the big buckets. So now a little bit of context on where we apply this, right? So we've participated in the Edelman competition this summer, which was a 2-year process to apply for it. Carnival, I'm sure a lot of them are familiar with Carnival brands, or they've been on a cruise. It's a global Carnival Cruise Line. There's multiple brands across the spectrum, and we were brought in to help them be in a bit. Go ahead.
I think that was just feedback. Someone unmuted themselves.
Oh, okay. So we were brought in to help them with the revenue management system, and more context on the portfolio across the globe, just for you guys to get an idea. The challenge that we had at hand was the multiple locations across the globe, and we had to go and design and implement a revenue management system that will be able to generate pricing and inventory recommendations for 6 of these brands. We started with 6 and then moved to 7, and this was a global context. So as I was talking about, it's just starting with starting with the vision. So the goals of what we affectionately called YODA, yield optimization demand analytics, were first to empower our pricing and commercial cross-brand community. Second, to better assess the demand dynamics and excel in yield performance, and advance the science, automation, and the simplification in key decision-making system and processes. This was a initiative that took us 3 years or so to develop on multiple platforms, involve hundreds of people, and ultimately that is a system that it's in place right now, and it's used for pricing and inventory controls for multiple global brands. So just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, cruises can be a couple of days, but also can be world cruises, multiple destinations, half a year. And in that case, you have this element of a network optimization, where you have to determine prices for somebody who might be at sea half a year or even more, if they have enough money to purchase such a ticket. So one element is pricing, and we help them with that. But the other element is that you are capacity constrained, right? And every cabin unsold, it counts. So it was not just determining prices, but determining how to allocate that inventory across these price levels in a way that we maximize revenue. And you can see on the right-hand side, we have a lot of cabins and a lot of prices. We are talking about optimizing more than 1 million price points per day for them. So that's the scale of the magnitude of the decisions that we're talking about, and it's been amazing to have that kind of an impact on a day-to-day operation. So, couple of words to conclude my presentation. I apologize if I went super fast, but a couple of thoughts around the new normal. So, we all live in it. There's this impact of a pandemic that has disrupted the economy and all the industry sectors in so many aspects. And I think what's important for us as future data scientists is always start with facts. Another good book that I can recommend you guys is Factfulness, which is it teaches you how to practice critical thinking in everything that you do and analyze everything through the lens of facts. So you kind of in the COVID context, I kind of did a quick Google Trend search and did a COVID, flu, and COVID-19. So you see the search interest worldwide for these three search, with the blue line being the COVID, and the COVID, the yellow one being the COVID-19, and then the flu, it's the red one. So a couple of things here, points out that you have to be really careful of the context and the type of variable that you're using. COVID-19 is not used for a search, although it's the correct scientific term. The other one, you look at the spike, and I'm going to talk about that next. That was probably the initial stage, and now I think we are in the recovery stage, and it looks like a long recovery. Nobody knows if this is going to be a V shape or we're going to run into a long recovery. A couple of things that I would recommend is to think about from a data science perspective, think about the impact of COVID as a staged approach. So one, it's the during. In the during phase, that initial peak, I would say you would try to minimize changes and keep the last good no configuration. I think no matter what you do, you're not going to have a significant impact on your business operations, to be honest. And if you can, you should try to maintain the status quo as much as possible. The stage 2 is the recovery, and it's important to understand that this recovery stage, I think we are in the recovery stage. Hopefully, we're not going to run in another peak. But this recovery is going to differ by geography, industry, and customer. So you have to think about all those dimensions when you're about to make inferences on recovery. And you should expect frequent calibration of models to take advantage of the latest data. And also, you should consider new drivers. I think one of the projects that you guys were working was the impact of Uber on restaurants. So that's a disruptive factor that maybe it was considered before, but maybe not. And you should think about that and plug it into your models as a way to increase accuracy of your predictions. And finally, the stage 3, which is the new normal. You should know for a fact that 2020 historical data is not reliable. I was talking about the data being the new oil. In that context, you need to do some data transformation for 2020 if you're going to project long-term patterns. And that transformation has to be blended with recent, which kind of goes to the second bullet point around continue with the frequent calibration of models. So I think facts first, definitely tough times for everybody. But I think as a data scientist and somebody that's involved with analytics, is important to consider all these 3 stages as you construct your models. So that concludes my presentation for today. I apologize if I went a little bit over time, but happy to take any questions from the audience.
Yeah, no, that was perfect, Dan. Thank you so much for spending your time and teaching us about data science. I definitely think it was very informative. So thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask. But yeah, it was a phenomenal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions so far, but maybe I could kick it off. So I'm just wondering, like, now that in our previous um, keynote or workshop a couple weeks ago, Dennis was talking about how COVID has been a transformative sort of force in pushing people to implement technology within their companies. Do you think that larger businesses might have a higher probability of weathering the pandemic? Because like you said, using the 2020 data is still unreliable, but like it's something to consider when you're operating, like when you have a small business that's operating on a day-to-day basis. What's your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Sam. I think it will depend on the situation and the industry and the type of customers. Well, I mean, you're seeing things that are or sectors that are booming, and you're seeing other industries that are taking a hit. My hope as a whole is that ultimately this will be weathered as soon as possible, and because there is a social impact to it as well. And I think what we could do as data scientists and folks that are involved in predictive analytics is help them during that transition period by continuing to select the appropriate models and monitoring the impact over time. A lot of the things that we're generating could give confidence to the business that the recovery is starting to happen, and that would mean people are coming back and to work. So that there's a lot of uncertainty for sure in the future. So it's hard to tell if being a bigger company or being a smaller company favors you in one way or the other. I will say that the modus operandi of businesses and this world of remote work, it's going to change drastically from my perspective, and that's something that maybe some organizations are better prepared than the others. It's going to take some time for others to get to the same point.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for that input. So there's two other very similar questions. So one from Dennis is, he's just asking, for someone that's starting in the data science space, what is a good place to find data, reports or anything of that sort? Can people find Google Trends, or is there any good start to get your hands dirty and start playing with data science?
Yeah, I love Google Trends as a quick way to just establish some correlation between, because internet is everywhere, between a specific search word and kind of a hypothesis, right? What I did with that Google search is like, well, I have an hypothesis that we are in the recovery phase, past the initial shock, past the during COVID, and by seeing that trend over time, it's kind of reconfirmation. Now that's not the end of my analysis. That's where you kind of get into secondary data, and you're looking at things like COVID statistics across country would be another one when you're thinking about COVID. But it depends. It depends. The U.S. Census and Bureau and things like that are good for gross product, and or the econ stats related to government. You can use that as a macroeconomic indicators. More specifically, aspects related to the data or the type of analysis that you're working on will typically be generated by the or provided by the customer that's looking to do some type of analysis. So there's the macro level and there's the micro level where you're kind of getting into customer specific data and confidentiality and things like that. But for you guys to get your hands dirty, so to speak, you can get in on all the public sources and try Google Trends.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a good place to start, I guess. So someone has also asked, like, what are some ways that they can expand their data science knowledge? Like, where are some good resources to learn? Yeah, it's essentially expand your knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of good online resources to and even like online competitions to get involved in. Um, I would make a I think I would favor one. I don't want to make favor one versus the other,
Hmm.
but depending on the type of subject you're focusing on, even somebody like AWS has good courses on predictive analytics, machine learning, and things like that. When you're talking about programming stuff, you can get into Python boot camps and things like that. That's something that maybe I can work with you, Sam, or Alex, to kind of have a list of recommended websites.
Hmm.
But take it with a grain of salt. This is a changing area, and I would say it's more important to get into one of these, regardless of what it is, and practice it, than just say, okay, this is the right one versus this is the wrong one.
For sure. Yeah, definitely love your input to, perhaps compile a list of resources. Perhaps one of the final questions I could ask is, or actually second last question, I'll ask two questions, but one of the questions that, I think it comes up whenever people talk about, data science and analyzing data is like, how do you know what information you need, first of all? And how do you know what parameters you need to set when you're looking for some sort of trend in your data?
Yeah. That is a great question, and I can tell you it's an iterative process. But again, it's really important to start with the why. So where if you understand the why and you have the willingness, at least coming from revenue management and pricing, to understand the business problem and truly be focused on helping, like how can I help? That is the most important thing. Now, in terms of the right parameters, it's important to define the success, right? So what how are we let me give you an example. How are we going to improve, for example, the forecast accuracy? Is there a target that we're aiming for, or in order to implement some prescriptive recommendations? We know that price recommendations that are even optimal, that are outside of certain upper and lower bounds, would not be accepted by the field. So then, are we seeing those price recommendations being outside of a business reasonable threshold, either upwards or downwards? And establish those criterias, because ultimately the best results that you're going to get is by having a close interaction between human and machine. Just leaving it to the machine, you can definitely get into surprising results. So it's an iterative process. Establish criteria for success, understand the why, and over time you'll understand what type of parameters need to be pushed in what direction to get closer to the business outcome. Now, with that, I would say that you also have surprises on the modeling side, where sometimes the common sense it's contradicted by what the model is saying.
Mhm.
And then I would say 90% of the time that's due to a data condition or some type of a thing that we didn't account it for. But the 10% of the time are really interesting insights, and those could generate a lot of value.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's definitely very informative because I used to think about that as well. Like, how do you know what you're looking for? But when you say that we should reinforce that understanding of why, that definitely adds a whole new perspective to it. And in that context, like the final question that I think a lot of people are eager to hear about is, why did you join data science? What was your, like, what sort of compelled you to join, this field? And what would you suggest to other people who are either exploring their options or have already they sort of fixed that they want to build a career around data science, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah, for me, it was a journey, right? It didn't happen overnight. I wasn't. It wasn't something that I had a calling for, to be honest. But for somebody who wants to be helpful and have an impact, and also in my case, I was passionate about the business problem in the business context, and making sure that what I do on a day-to-day basis is going to be applicable. There's definitely the academia aspect, which I'm not trying to say it's not important. That is also cutting edge, but in my case, it was about making an impact on day-to-day operations, helping people, and being passionate about the business. Like talking about solving and helping somebody like Carnival. When you think about it, there are hundreds of people that are using the system on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we worked on it to develop it like 3 years, and they'll be using that for years to come. That is something that's pretty cool. It's kind of a legacy. So and it's definitely, when I think about it, it's the idea of building something that's used on a day-to-day basis.
For sure, yeah, I definitely think that's very powerful. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much, Dan. You've definitely been very, very helpful today, and we hope to have you back sometime in the future to definitely share more insight within data science. A lot of people are saying thank you and they're cheering you on. Um, but I can speak on behalf of everybody and say that was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Zenter and Timur and everybody. Really, I appreciate you listening to me. I think what you guys are doing is amazing, and I applaud you for this initiative. And if there's anything I can do to help in the future, let me know.
For sure, we'll definitely keep you posted. Thank you so much, Dan.
All right. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. So that was Dan. That was a very good presentation. Alrighty. So let's get to back to Tech 20. Can you guys see my screen? Yep. All right. Alrighty. So we're going to run through a few things. Before we start, there's something about the office hours that we would like to clarify. If you haven't joined Discord already, it is very critical that, or very crucial that you guys join Discord to just stay on top of what's happening within the chapters. A lot of chapters are using, Discord as their, all-in-one communication system. So do join Discord, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to get in touch with Yazan or any of the other chapter directors specific to Discord. Otherwise, there is a list that I sent on the email yesterday. I sent it to everybody who applied for the Tech 20 Ventures program. But essentially, it was I can't find it here, but it's essentially the document had a list of who runs each chapter and what time their office hour meetings are at, and how you can get in touch with them. But I would definitely say hop onto Discord and make sure that you're already enrolled within your chapter. Awesome. So the next thing after that is we're going to go through a case one project demonstration. And by demonstration, it's very, very informal. It's not exactly what your project should look like, but it's a very high level, just to help you guys understand what is expected of you for next week. Okay.
High level meaning surface level, right?
Yes, surface level, super surface level. So the objective of this challenge, right, for the case one project is to allow you guys to expand your critical thinking skills, your problem solving, and your pitching skills. The main goal that we would like you guys to achieve is to identify a problem, like Dan was talking about, understand why it's important, why is it significant, and use data to justify that significance. So that's all you guys have to figure out using the StatsCan website. You just have to scrape the data and then put it into a quick 5 to 10 minute presentation in terms of why you think that's significant. The goal for next week's workshop is to get feedback on how you think, how you might consider improving your presentation, and essentially clarifying, your understanding of why that problem is significant to begin with. And then the last but not least is the technical, skill of, are you able to scrape data from the website? Now, the reason why we've included, web scraping and, Python introduction to HTML is simply because we want to break that intimidation of, of getting into programming and understanding what the foundational skills are.
Do you want me to microwave you a tortilla?
Timur, your mic is on. But yeah, anyways, where was I going? Yeah. So essentially the technical requirement is is to help you guys understand that, like, you should be able to use Python, and you understand how it works, where it could be applied. The web scraping itself it's a very small component of the larger picture, right? And if you notice, it's at the very bottom of this list. It's sort of allow you guys to go through that checklist and say, okay, I've programmed in my life or whatever, and but still understand that you're trying to come up with a problem and understand why that problem is significant. That's sort of what we want to focus on for this particular case. Now, what do you guys need to do to prepare for next week? Well, some of you guys have already formed teams of 2 to 4 people. You have to sign up using the Google Forms that I sent to everybody's email. If you haven't received it, it'll be on Discord. I'll send a follow-up email again with all the relevant documents that you guys need to use or reference, over the course of the week. The next thing you guys need to do is scrape one industry's information from the StatsCan website. And all you got to do once you scrape that data is compare with current news. And what we mean by that is, like, we actually put together an example, data set, if you want to call it, from using the web scraping, using this scraped data from StatsCan. And essentially, all we're trying to understand is from 3 or 4 variables, what can you predict? What can you think about, in the context of current news that affect those 4 variables? How have those 4 variables changed over time leading up to COVID? What is it like now? And what do you think is going to look like beyond COVID? That's sort of what we want you guys to figure out and think about, just to understand, what is that specific problem that you guys are trying to, discover, and why is it important? And last but not least, you're going to present your analyses. What is the problem what is the problem your team discovered, and how does it relate to the data that you've scraped from the StatsCan website? Now, as I said, the presentation day, if you want to call it, is very informal. But we do have, we've so far confirmed 3 highly, they're very educated people from the community. We've got Barbara from RBC, who's a senior director. We've also invited Mo, who's a software engineer at Google. He went to Queen's University for engineering, and now he works within Google's cloud and big data products. And of course, our Tech Under 20 god Dennis. We're also inviting him he's also coming to our presentation day. The aim of the game for next week is to help you guys understand, where do you need to improve? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? It's a very informal thing. There's no pressure. It's just to help you guys understand, how you can grow to become a better entrepreneur. That's all we want to help you guys with. Now, this is the data that we collected, rather scraped from the StatsCan site, and it's all compiled onto a table, as you can see. Now, what was I think we scraped the hotel. Timur, do you remember the sector that we scraped?
Yeah. So if you could just pull up the website, you don't have to, but it would kind of paint a pretty cool picture. Yeah.
Where was it? I think it was accommodation and food services. That's where it was. Not sure why it's not loading, but let's try it from here. Alrighty. Okay, I guess it's not working.
Well, anyway, it was essentially if you remember from week one, you are greeted with a list of industries like accommodation, manufacturing, construction, things like that. We chose one of them. We chose accommodation and services, and we clicked that sector, and there it is. So we clicked that sector, and this big old list came up, and we decided that Sam, if you click 72, the link for 72, so this data is the average data for all of the subsectors of accommodations and services. But what we are interested is in not just the average of all of it, but kind of each little part and how it relates to what proportion of the average is it, how much does it affect the average, things like that. So if you go back, click accommodations again, what we scraped is essentially every little subsector in here. So 72111, 72112, 72121, all of those. So we took the innermost subsector and we scraped every single one individually. What we ended up with was this data set. And it'd be cool if we could just show like the process, if you could call it that. So Sam, just go to like the first subsector. The first like
So 72111.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 72111, if we click hotels, it shows us the average revenue and the percentage of profitable it is. So we take that data and we put it into the spreadsheet. And then we move on to 72112, which is casino hotels. And then we do other traveler accommodations. You can go, yeah. So we just go down the list and we keep clicking that link and we keep scraping whatever data we can find on this page.
Exactly. And then once we've scraped that data and put it onto some sort of spreadsheet. Now, keep in mind, all this data is from before 2020, or if not, like before COVID. So whatever data you're going to get is pretty dated, if you want to call it. But that's nothing. It's not that it's bad or anything. It's just dated, and that allows you to show that allows you to understand what the trends were like prior to COVID-19. Now, if I click on these articles, right, these are articles specific to, I've just like grabbed 4 articles that I could find on the accommodation and food services sector. But if I click on them, I'm able to see, okay, more than half of Canadian restaurants may permanently close within months. Now, okay, why are half of Canadian restaurants on the verge of closing? And why is it within months, right? Using this data over here, we have number of establishments, number of employees, average revenue. We can also gather, the amount. Now, although this percentage indicates like if they've sort of if they've surpassed their expenses, it doesn't necessarily indicate how how profitable each business is on an average, right? And from that information, it says here, dire prediction that 60% of people are unable to operate with social distancing measures in place and may have to close. Like, that is a staggering statistic. Now, why is it that 60% of these restaurants say they're unable to operate with physical distancing? In this case, with accommodation food services, the industry is highly reliant on physical movement of people, right? People need to go into a restaurant, into a bar, into a casino, and they need to like physically spend money, right? And as you guys remember from Dennis's keynote, right, using Uber Eats or any of these like on the house softwares, it's very hard for restaurants that are making 5% margin or whatever on their on their revenue to afford to use these types of services so that they can continue making the revenues that they were making before, right? How is the fact that, like, if we go to another article, right? yeah, I guess this is the same article, similar article. But over here it says 1 in 10 restaurants around the country have permanently closed due to COVID-19. Now, why is that so? Like, if we could figure that out by getting a deeper understanding of what this metric really means and how it connects to this metric. You don't need to do web scraping or anything. It's just like, basic research. How did these two metrics connect and how does it relate to this news article? You know, that's what we're looking for. How are you guys able to think about these different variables in the context of closing businesses, affected, businesses affected by COVID-19? What's happening? If people are closing, I would assume that the percentage of businesses that have under 100 employees is probably going to go up as well because people are, they unfortunately have to let go of people. So in that sense, they have to, a lot of these businesses, I wouldn't be surprised if this particular, variable, if the values in this column would go up. Like, I wouldn't be surprised about it. And at the same time, if number of establishments are going down, how can you connect all the pieces together to create a comprehensive picture of what this problem is all about? That's all we're looking for you guys to explain. And that's exactly what our judges are going to provide feedback on, is how well are you able to explain these trends and explain your findings, sorry, using the data that you've scraped off of StatsCan.
May I say something?
Yeah.
One example of such a conclusion or insight, whatever you want to call it, is so restaurants, they're part of the accommodation and service industry, right? But are they a recreational vehicle park or recreational camp? No, they're not. They're also not they're not a food service contractor or a caterer or a mobile food service. All the restaurants in this data set are basically located in line 11 in the data set. You can see full service restaurants and limited service eating places and drinking places. So drinking places are bars and full service restaurants are the rest of the restaurants. And if you look at the average revenue, those two, along with hotels, make up the biggest proportion. And we could probably conclude from the articles that a lot of the revenue from that industry is based on drinking places and full service restaurants. And since they're closing, the problem is that the industry is dying. Pretty much.
Yeah, and we want to understand, how are you guys thinking about these issues? Like, you don't need to come up with a solution. We just want to understand what the problem is all about. Now, some of you guys have sort of jumped the ball, and which is good. And you've asked about the criteria. So the criteria was sent earlier. We can send it again in the follow-up email. It's available in the members public drive. So if you wanted to pin it.
I put a link in the chat as well.
Okay, perfect. So this is the case feedback criteria that you're going to be sort of, given feedback on. And once again, like, the purpose of getting feedback is very clearly outlined at the very beginning. The idea is that you need to have, everyone's going to have strengths and weaknesses. That's totally perfect. And that's what makes you, you. And we want to understand, and the goal of being, in this program or any sort of high school, adventure is to understand that you have the opportunity to grow, and understanding how you can grow and what it is you need to address, will essentially enable you to become a better person. And that's what we want you to, discover. That's what we want to help you with. And at the end of the day, like, being an entrepreneur, like, an entrepreneur from day zero is not the same as an entrepreneur, as of day 100, right? Like, Elon Musk is not the same person from when he started to how he is today. I'm sure there's a lot of experience, a lot of growth that took place that essentially made him who he is today. But going into specific feedback criteria, in terms of the presentation, again, it's just very similar. It's basically your general presentation, checklist. Is a presentation fluid? Is it organized well? I can perhaps zoom into this a little bit. Do you guys have good, presentation skills? The pitch should be about 5 to 10 minutes in length, with about 5 minutes as a question and answer period. But again, it's just very informal. Do you guys understand what the problem is like? Do you guys understand what the industry is like? We want to see that, when you're using your data to back up your findings. That's pretty much it. And then in terms of the project expectations, right? So this is so we're gonna give this to our judges. I would say mentors rather. They will use this specific checklist to make sure that you're sort of, your presentation is looking good. But in terms of like specifically what you guys need to include in your presentation can be found on this specific document. The project expectations, again, like, what is the problem your team wants to address, and what is the data set that you've scraped from the Canadian Industry Statistics website, and why did you guys choose to scrape that data set? Like, what sort of made it? What compelled you guys to investigate that, that sector a little bit more? And again, it's just 5 to 10 minute presentation. You'll be presenting on Zoom with the screen share, so make sure that you guys have someone that can, share their screen. So once again, review the feedback criteria. And just to sum it all up, you guys have to form a team, right? That's the first thing you need to do. Second thing you need to do is figure out and scrape the data set that you plan on using for your project. And then the third thing is, compare that data with compare and use that data to explain what's happening, in the current, in current day society, like using news, using the newer statistics or data that you have access to. What is happening in this industry? That's what we want to know about. What are the problems? And you don't need to put together a solution. That's not what we're really looking for. We just we just want to see how thoroughly you've investigated the problem and how much you know about that specific sector. There's also a recommended timeline at the bottom. So I understand most of you guys haven't signed up for the teams. I would say sign up for the teams as soon as possible. Even if you haven't had your office hours meeting yet with your chapter leaders, still try to, message your team members or something if you already know who you're going to be with, and take initiative. Like, just fill out the form. Again, that will be coming up in an email shortly. But you guys, I think the email should have gone to everybody that's here. I sent it to all 100 people that sort of signed up. Otherwise, like, you should be able to practice your pitch, and you'll rock the presentation. I'm sure you guys are going to do really well. But otherwise, we can go through some sample FAQs. Like, if you guys don't have a team, or like you're like, if you're in a chapter, or if you're in a school that doesn't have a Tech Under 20 chapter, we'll definitely find another group of members to place you in. So don't worry about that. We have access to all the Tech Under 20 Ventures registrants data, so we know where chapters are, and we'll be reaching out to people who aren't in teams yet, just to make sure that everybody's signed up. Otherwise, the deadline is tomorrow at midnight, so please make sure you sign up for teams. And then who will be critiquing our pitches? So again, it'll be senior leaders and data folks from well-established businesses. They'll be able to kickstart your entrepreneurial adventure. Again, it's very informal. These guys are amazing. You guys have probably interacted with Dennis before. He's a really cool guy. So he's everything. He's our Tech Under 20 god. So feel free. We're here to help you guys. That's sort of the aim of the game for us. Our goal is to help you guys. We don't want to fast track anything. We want to help you explore the opportunities that are out there and help you become a better person at the end of the year. If you haven't done this before, how do you prepare? You don't need to have any previous technical experience. What I would say is, actually, I just noticed we should probably link the YouTube playlist, but you can go back and check out the Python notebooks that Timur has put together. They're very comprehensive. They're very easy to follow on your own, and definitely check them out. If you need some sort of like explanation or something, then by all means, feel free to check out the Tech Under 20 Ventures YouTube playlist that's on our channel. I can link that here, and I'll definitely I'll link it on the email. But yeah, walk through the Python coding. The coding itself, it shouldn't be too difficult. If you follow the notebooks pretty well, you should be able to understand what's expected of you. if you still don't understand it, you're running into these sort of ongoing challenges. I would say your best bet is to either reach out to your chapter leader, or B, use Discord. There's so many talented people within our Tech Under 20 community that are really they're really out there they'd be really happy to help you. So feel free to use that to your advantage. And even if you're like ahead of the game and you've finished your project with a few days left, try to figure out how you can improve it. Right? You've Nothing is fully finished, fully perfect. There's always something that you can improve. So definitely get feedback. Get as much feedback as you can get. That's something that I would suggest. And the other thing is there is a price for this case for the top workshop. Dennis, is Dennis still here?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. That's fine. So essentially the prize is 200 and can't remember the exact number. Do you guys remember what the price was? I think it was around $240, something like that. So yeah, there is a prize. It's a cash prize. That's what I know. This was just recent news, so sorry about that. But essentially, there is a cash prize, and the top team, and or maybe even the teams that meet a specific criteria, will achieve this cash prize. Again, it's all on the docs. If you want to take a look at it later, we'll update this as soon as the workshop is over. And if you can't complete the task by presentation day, so I would say, in terms of the technical challenge, right? If you guys have a week from now to complete whatever you need to complete, in my opinion, you should be able to complete it. However, if you find that the technical challenge is taking a bit of time, feel free to explain how you might get the data using like Python. You don't need to have gotten the data. Just explain how you would approach solving the technical challenge. Don't worry too much about if you can't complete the test. Try your best. That's all that matters. And try to understand what this industry is all about. Once again, if you guys delegate tasks between your team members and establish a plan between now and next, let's say Monday night, you guys are fully prepared. 6 days time, you guys work on this for even like a couple hours. Like I don't think it'll take you guys even that long. You guys should be able to. You should be okay to do well on this first challenge. And once again, it's okay to make mistakes. Take your time, give it your best effort, and learn from the experience. But that's it from my side. Timur, if you have anything else to add, feel free to go for it. Otherwise, do you guys have any other questions?